Hello guys, this is Sugar Oscar 9, Lima Echo Kilo, and today, that's my call sign, I'm a radio operator, right? And today I'm gonna teach you how to measure crystal resonator's frequency using a radio transceiver. You can use a SDR. If you have a SDR, that's great. Or you can use a regular radio. Or if you're fancy, you can use a frequency counter, but well, if you have a frequency counter, then you measure frequency directly, but I want to show you how to measure the frequency. If you only have a radio on you, or an SDR, you can use a $5 SDR dongle and make a little up converter for it. The world's open for possibilities. Now, what do you need? You need a crystal oscillator circuit, basically. See, I made this little box. There are two contacts here. See, the two blades, they go to the base and the ground in the oscillator. You can use a wide variety of oscillator topologies. I suggest like a regular common collector, like one transistor oscillator plus another transistor for there's like a common collector, like a buffer. So when you bring stuff closer and further from the little oscillator, you won't hear, the frequency won't change. It's basically more stable and better measurements. I think so, maybe. I think I screwed something up. Wait. No, it's working. It's good. It's good. I think so. I think I broke something. I don't know. Dang it. Yep, I broke. Turns out I didn't break anything. So what do you need? You need a crystal oscillator. There's a variety of topologies. You can look circuits and stuff online. I added two plates, two tin coated like steel plates, one to the base, one to the ground, so I could like use a crystal, put it right here and measure it. But you can also add a little pin header. See, there's like a pin header here. You can insert crystals as well. That also works. So what do you need on your phone? You need a frequency counter app. The frequency counter app on your phone basically take the input from the mic and try to measure the audio frequency, because the method we're using to determine the frequency of the oscillator, see, we are switched to LSB mode, basically of reception, the lower sideband, and the lower sideband, to the lower sideband we need to wait a second. And in the lower sideband, we switch to lower sideband because we can detect like a regular non-modulated sine wave continuous wave signal using LSB mode, because there's a BFO in the radio that mixes the signal down to audio frequency level. It's complicated, but basically the gist of it is we hear the difference between the frequency of reception. See here, the difference between the frequency of reception, the frequency it's the frequency of reception, basically what says here on the radio display when set to LSB. We hear the difference of it and the frequency at which the crystal oscillator operates. So as you can see, we hear a tone. If I tune the radio a bit, the tone frequency changes, because since the frequency we hear on the headphones is the difference between, you subtract from this number here the frequency of this little oscillator, and you've got the sound, the frequency of a sine wave that you can hear on your phones. Let's say if that was a 2 kilohertz sine wave, it sounds like a 2 kilohertz. That means the crystal frequency would be 8.864 megahertz, basically, because if we hear a 2 kilohertz tone here, we subtract 2 kilohertz from here and we get the frequency of the oscillator. And now since we need to know the frequency at which, well, the frequency we hear here, we need to download the app on your phone called a frequency counter. It takes basically the input from your mic You basically stick your phone near the headphones. The app then takes the input from the mic and tries to determine the frequency of the sound. That method, it works very good. I tested several quartz crystals here, and yeah, basically what you need to do is you need to hook up a connector wire like that. It's like a regular connector wire to your radio, and bring the tip of the connector, UHF connector, close to the antenna. You can connect the antenna as like a little antenna close to the oscillator circuit. I'd like to add a little antenna to it. Basically it's connected to the emitter of the separator buffer amplifier, but you can connect it to the emitter, because we're using a BJT emitter, of basically the output of your oscillator. You have to bring them a little bit close, but you shouldn't make them touch, because you might damage your radio, because sometimes the oscillator signal is kind of strong, you know. We don't want to burn anything. And so yeah, let's say, as I said before, this is how you determine frequency of crystals. You just stick a crystal here. First of all, you need to tune the radio to roughly the frequency of what it says on the case. In this case, our crystal says it's 8. Okay, please focus. 8.867.238 megahertz. So I tune my radio to a frequency that's a little bit lower. You see, you will never get the exact frequency that's written here on the case. You will never get the exact frequency that's written on the case, because the oscillator pulls the frequency down. It pulls the frequency of the crystal down a little bit, a kilohertz or two, and you need basically to plug the crystal in, tune your radio, the frequency of your radio somewhere in the neighborhood of the crystal, and see at what frequency do you get the whistling sound, and then subtract from the frequency you get on your screen. Subtract the frequency you measure using a audio frequency counter, and that's your crystal frequency. Now, to make crystal filters, there are two options. You can use McCoy filters. There are basically 4 crystals, and there are 2 crystal pairs. There's a 1.6 to 1.5 to 1.8 kilohertz difference between each crystal resonator pair. So there are 4 crystals in total, and 2 have, let's say, 600 kilohertz, and the other 2 have 600 and 1.5 kilohertz. That's an example. They have to be a little bit. They have 2 different frequency. That's a good crystal filter. You can Google it. This is like 4 crystals basically. I don't know if you can find it online. But there are also ladder filters. Ladder filters are more commonly used. In ladder filters, all the crystal resonators have to have the same frequency. Well, since life's not perfect, you ain't gonna get perfect basically the same frequency. You'll never get it. Just impossible, physically impossible. But it has been determined that you can make the crystal filter work. It can work if there's a little bit of difference between each filter, but all crystals used in a ladder filter have to basically be less than 100 hertz apart from each other. Let's say I've got these filters crystals are already tested. I'll turn it off. See, this one has 8.86473 megahertz, so that's basically 700 hertz and 30 hertz, 730 hertz. This is just 700 hertz, so there's 30 hertz of difference, so we can use these. But now, let's say we measure a crystal that has 8.8657 megahertz, and we wanted to use it along with a 8.86473. See, we cannot use it because the difference between these two is around 1 kilohertz. So they're too far apart, so we cannot use it in a ladder filter. But if that was a but we found these, let's say another crystal with the same frequency as this, and another crystal with the same frequency as this. This one has a very similar frequency. Let's say if we have found such crystals, then we could we even found them. See, I think we've got two crystals that have that very similar frequency, and two other crystals that have a very similar frequency. And there's, in this case, it's 1 kilohertz difference between these two. That means that we could make a crystal filter. In this case, since it's 1 kilohertz, the bandwidth would probably be around 1.5 kilohertz, so it's good for telegraphy, Morse code or CV. It's kind of sharper filter. So yeah, that's how you make measure frequency using common methods. If you have an SDR, like a fancy SDR, that can receive between 100, that can receive below, because most of those little SDR tuners, I'm gonna show you them. I think I lost it. No, it's here. Yep. That's a little SDR thingy. These these work basically down to 20 megahertz. They work from 20 megahertz to 1.5 gigahertz. So it's hard to measure. You cannot measure with them directly, but there are special SDRs, and there are special boards. Even you can, like a conversion board, see, that basically does some work for you. Like you can, it makes the SDR basically receive signals down to 150 kilohertz. So you can, with a conjunction, you can basically have special mods to SDR tuners that allow them to receive frequencies lower than 20 megahertz. In this case, you can basically use an SDR to measure the frequency directly, because when you use an SDR, you see on your computer display, on the waterfall display, basically waterfall display, you can see the exact frequency of a signal. So all you need to do is basically the same. Stick a crystal resonator in your crystal oscillator, take the antenna wire or antenna, whatever you use, close to the SDR, close to the to the oscillator, and you can see this directly, the frequency at which the crystal resonates. I usually try to first I clean the surface of the crystal a little bit, like the crystal case. Then I take like a permanent marker, a Sharpie or whatever, and just write the frequency directly on it. And if you get, let's say, around five crystals that have frequencies that are less than 100 hertz, well, actually 100, maybe 50 hertz, actually, you know, they have to be as close as possible, let's say, but let's say 100 or 50 hertz close to each other, you can make a ladder filter. There are special, sometimes people say that you need to measure the series inductance, the series capacitance, parallel capacitance of the crystal. This is not true. They just want to make your life harder, or maybe you don't actually need to do that. The only thing you need to do is you need to measure the frequency. If the frequency is less than 50 hertz apart, 100, and then you basically have to. Only thing you need to do is you need to collect all of them in series and play around with the values of capacity of because there are capacitors and filters, and basically you can try out different capacity combinations. I will show you now a little booklet I have that says quite a lot about crystal filters. So in this booklet, in this little book called Układy nadawcze i odbiorcze dla krótkofalowców, it's a Polish book, there are a few tips and tricks about crystal filters. Basically, this is how you connect like a crystal filter. Yeah, make one with 2, with 3, or with 4 crystal filters. You can also use like a little bit more complicated designs here. You can find a PDF on this book online, page 215. Although it's in Polish, I think since this is like schematics and stuff, you can use Google Translate and basically just look on the schematics, see its values, some mathematical formulas. I think you can get the hang of it. That's the book name. And in this book, as you can see, the other thing that's important in crystal filters, apart from the crystals itself, are the capacitors. As you can see, if let's say you find two crystals with a frequency of, let's say, basically the same frequency as we have tested here, we have found a pair. The middle capacitor has to be 2 times as big as, if you use two resonators, see, this is the formula. See also these two capacitors. I have, let's say, a capacitance of C, so let's say 100 picofarad, and this capacitor in the middle, C1, has 2 times the capacitance of C, so this one has 200 picofarads, well, 220, because they did not make 200 picofarad caps as far as I know. And if we would use the bigger capacitance, bigger numbers of resonators, the frequency is a little bit different, the capacitance form is a little bit different. So we see the outer crystals C0, the outer capacitors C0 are 0.7 times C. So let's say, I don't know, let's say if C is 100, there will be 70 picofarad. And the middle one is 2.1 times C, so if in our case it would be also, so the outer ones will be 70 picofarad and the middle one will be 220 picofarad. Well, 212, but we rounded up to 220 because they don't make 212 picofarad caps. In this case, if you use a bigger number of capacitances, of resonators, sorry, we need the formula is also a little bit different. See, in this case, the outer capacitance C0 is 0.4 times C, so will be if we determine that C will be 100 picofarad, let's say 100 picofarad, there will be 40 picofarad. The middle ones will be the C1, so these two will be 180 picofarad, the middle one will be 280 picofarad. But as we can see, we're just determining things out of our head. The F Foxtrot 6 I forgot the phonetic alphabet. Wonderful. Foxtrot 6 Bravo Quebec Papa has. This is basically, he's written this in some article in the book somewhere. It's basically, this book is basically copying from some articles from foreign newspapers that basically figured out something. It's like a collection of articles, really. He already has calculated like a filter for 9 megahertz. You see, we're using we were talking about 8.866 megahertz resonators. You can use basically the same values of elements like in 9 megahertz filters, because the frequency is basically the same. So if you used 8.2 picofarad, 39, 56, 39, 8.2, you can basically, with 4 crystal resonators have a similar frequency. You would also get, see, as far as I know, you would get bandwidth of 2.5 kilohertz with 850 ohm impedance. Impedance is also important in crystal filters because you see, basically the impedance, that's the impedance of the filters, is basically if we use the crystal filter in our radio we're making, basically the output impedance of the following stage has to be, if I has 850 ohms, to get the best characteristic of the impedance. So let's say you want to get this characteristic. If you change the impedance, it will get a little bit shift, it's gonna look worse. So if R has 850 ohms, that means we put we use a 850 ohm output impedance of the first stage before the filter, and the next stage after the filter has a 850 ohm input impedance as well. That's how you connect it, as far as I know. That's another crystal filter design. Is for CV telegraphy. I'm not sure what kind of crystals it's used here. You use 8.8 megahertz, so the crystals we're talking about here. So that basically is a crystal filter. But when you're using CV, when you make a SSB filter, you can use crystals that have, let's say, 100 hertz difference between each other. Well, not 100, but let's say 50 hertz. That's, yeah, 50 hertz would be better. But if you use making a CV filter, it's better to try to get like a the frequency of the difference has to be a little bit lower, let's say 30 hertz, 10 hertz sometimes, to get a better response. The SSB filters are much more tolerant in that regard. You see, it's described here: 4 crystals, 400 hertz bandwidth at -3 decibels. So at -6 it would be probably like 500 hertz. That's the parameters. At -60 decibels, 2.2 kilohertz bandwidth, maximal attenuation 80 decibels. The crystal frequency 8.8 megahertz. So the ones we were testing here, the PAL crystals or whatever, they can be used, no problem. That's the values. See, that's how we connect it to AC. This basically the. It's like I put a resistor in series with the filter. That's half of the input impedance of the filter, and then in the drain, basically in the collector or the drain of the preceding stage, you put a half of the resistance as well. So let's say one, that's the ones written here. I'm not sure what's the 50 ohms. So in this case would be 20. If we use this filter, since it has 50 ohms, we put 25 ohms here and 25 ohms here. And also, since basically that's the input impedance of the following stage, if we use like a bipolar transistor, we want to design, well, since bipolar transistor is around 1 kilo ohm input impedance, so it's very high weight compared to 50 ohms of this, so we put also a 25 ohm here, 25 ohm here, and we've got a nice working filter. Well, sometimes crystal filters have to have, they don't only need a especially McCoy filters, because ladder filters, they only need to be terminated with a resistance. They got a built-in capacitance here, so they only need to be terminated with a resistance. But in McCoy filters, sometimes you need a loading capacitance, basically. So not only a resistor to, that's so basically not a resistive load, but also a little bit of a capacitive load. So on the output and on the input of the filter, trimmer capacitors are used, and yeah, that's in this case in a PP9A2 Polish crystal filter. By the way, crystal filters are freaking expensive. You should make your own. In Poland, this crystal filter, like we used to make crystal filters back in communist times. I think Ohmik, basically Ohmik is a Polish crystal oscillator crystal manufacturer. Those crystal filters used to cost around 900 zlotys. 900 zlotys back in the day, that's around, normal worker was paid from, let's say, 1,000, maybe 2,000 zlotys, depending on the inflation. So like paying half or quarter of your monthly wage for a crystal filter. You know, yeah, life was hard. And yeah, these are some other circuits. See, you can make two filters. This is how you switch filters. You can use diodes as switches to switch between a SSB filter and a CV filter. See, you put connect this thingy. I don't know. You can use also piezo ceramic filters, whatever. So yeah, this is how you connect a filter in a yeah, that's how you connect. So see, that's the input stage, a preamplifier with a MOSFET. Oh, so I think someone's, yeah, that's the VFL. That's basically mixer with a preamplifier, mixes to the IF frequency, goes straight to the crystal filter, terminating resistors, terminating capacitors. This is a McCoy filter, so you probably need those terminating capacitors. And then during reception goes through the filter, first IF amplifier, and pitch, that's IF. So basically goes to the IF amplifier string. When we want to transmit, that's our balanced mixer. BFO goes here. Low frequency signal MC. MC is mała częstotliwość, low frequency, goes through this little choke to the input of the other input of the mixer. gets mixed. We have a double sideband signal, so the upper sideband along with the lower sideband are together. Plus a little bit of the carry wave goes through the filter, gets filtered out. So in LSB, the lower sideband gets passed, and the higher one gets ripped off. And then it goes through this amplifier, and there's like a transmit receive. O is receive, N is not transmit, and this basically gets switched. And if we are transmitting, it goes to to the transmitting mixer that this is a tube circuit, so we use a 180F. That's a pentode. That's a pentode with a short characteristic. Yeah, it's a decent tube. Russian is 6-9BW or B, just, yeah. And that's how you use a crystal filter. Basically, how you measure crystal filters, how you use crystal filters. And maybe I'm gonna show you something also that's kind of important for you. Crystal oscillators. This is how you use a field effect transistor. Yeah, that's good. That's the circuit you can use. Oh, these are special resonators because they got a little trimmer coil. Trimmer coil basically like to get the frequency. You can change the frequency of a resonator a little bit if you add like a inductor in series. By the way, you can normally when measuring crystal filters, we usually get a series. We get the frequency of series resonance. I think so, maybe. I don't know. I'm looking for something. I'm looking to show you. Oh, that's the characteristics. See, a quartz resonator has 2 resonances. That's the. No, I don't know. I want to show you a little resonator circuit that you can use to measure things. But it appears this book is not really helpful. It uses field effect transistors. I don't like field effect transistors. They're expensive. They cost money, you know. I don't like when they cost money. Harmonic generators. Yeah, you can use a crystal. Oh wait, whatever. I don't know. Pierce, culprits. Whatever. MOSFETs. That's how you use a. That's a good circuit, I guess. Maybe. You can use whatever. Yeah, just use this circuit. It's good. I think I used a similar one. Just get rid of this trimmer capacitor. Just connect a crystal directly here, maybe through a 100 picofarad. I don't know. Let's say a 1 nanofarad capacitor. Replace this capacitor with a trimmer, 101 nanofarad. That's a good circuit. And connect that to a simple common emitter amplifier. You can connect the antenna directly if you want. That's basically the simural. It is gonna give you the parallel resonance frequency, I think. Yeah, use a parallel. We get in a parallel resonance frequency. So use this circuit to test crystals. And that's the end of this video. I hope you learned a lot from my rambling. I think so. Maybe I just wanted to show you how to measure frequency of crystals, but now I explained basically crystal filters and everything. Yeah, it's a good book. You should look up the PDF file. It's online. Just Google it. Kłady nadawcze i odbocze dla krótkofalowców. See, it's Polish letters. See? Oh, there. Yeah. There's no ISBN number. Yeah, no, that's here. See? That's the ISBN number. It's a great book. See? You got everything here. The problem is it's in Polish, so you probably won't understand it. So yeah, but that's how you make. That's basically crystals for you. I hope you liked the video. See you next time, and I hope you are successful in your crystal filter thingy, making whatever, I don't know, just have fun, like living the life of a person who wants to build a crystal filter. Bye bye 7-3, see you on the air. I work 40 meters, that's my home band, because that's the only band that I have antenna that kinda works on. So yeah, bye bye 73, God bless.